Time to put on my astronaut suit and load my rocket fuel.
All right, welcome one and all
Hills here.
to what was an absolutely epic event, a multi-team ladder race where it basically was a free-for-all. It was kind of crazy. Yes, we did have our teams, as you can see over my shoulder. The Discord chat was absolutely jam-packed with riders for the Dirty Crabz, which is the team I'm on. But as you can see from the jerseys, we got Rhino in there, we got ATP, we've got OTR, Herd.
Pavlik doesn't come.
It is an
She's
absolute
strong
just
Rhino
amalgamation of teams. Literally a little bit of everybody, which was absolutely fantastic. Coalition, TFC. So I don't want to miss anybody out. Sisu's in there. Just looking back at the finishing list, and man, oh man, what a race. And so as we set off, pushing hard, and you can see already there's a few guys just ramping it up and getting out of this start.
A few people pushing hard off the front already.
Initial kind of roll in or neutralized section, supposed to be neutralized section. It is just absolute fire. And so we are pushing. You see my average watts is already over 300, and still doing 400 watts just to kind of hold into this group. And we haven't even hit a minute yet of racing. And so as we round the corner, we do slow down a bit, but that is really the last time that we kind of, slow down much. Like there's, in and through this race, there's a lot of points where we slow down, we speed up, slow down, we speed up. So this course being the coast to coast, we come out from what I would consider like the Spanish Villa area. And then out of this area, we go in through the Rolling Hills coastline and then over to the Tempest Fugate area and just really touching the desert for a moment just to go up and out of the desert and then back in through towards Jarvis, which is towards the end there. And so not a lot of climbing to do. Yeah, we got Jarvis. Yeah, we got, the climb out of the desert, as well as through the tunnels. So there's some climbing there, but really it's not it's not steep enough to where it's going to mess a lot of people up. And so that is, really the baseline of the terrain. You see, got one of our guys kind of pushing off the front a little bit, but ultimately the hard part about this race, and I'm going to do some fast forwarding here in a little bit, but the hard part about this race is the fact that there's so many different teams. Our strategy going into it was really, looking for any strong breaks that start to happen and making sure we're covering those breaks. We've got, our team has a lot of people in this race. And so it being kind of open call to, the different teams and having, representative riders in the team. From my understanding, there wasn't a limit on how many people could be in there. So, we had quite a bit. And part of that was just making sure that we had guys covering the front, covering the middle, covering the back. Like we had guys everywhere. And so anything that did go off the front, usually we had someone nearby that, was ready to go. And so you see you got JD in here, Brian, just so many different riders that, I'm used to riding with in and through the week, and a lot of fresh faces for me. Now, looking at the Zwift Racing app site, the range of velo scores went all the way from Sapphire, one person that's a Sapphire, which is level 4, all the way down to level 10. which is basically a brand new person. It's copper level. And so the people that were, essentially if you were under
Figure it'll
gold,
get
which
harder
is
again
level
after the
7,
Sasquatch.
so if you were 8, 9, or 10, like kudos to you for being in this race because this was not easy. Absolutely not an easy race. And some of those guys did pretty good to hold on. And then most of the middle of the pack was silvers, golds, platinums, um, which is where I'm at right now at the platinum level, but just on the cusp of going into the amethyst. And so, yeah, it was just fantastic racing. So if you're not familiar with the Zwift racing app site, go ahead and check it out, get yourself registered so you can see what I'm talking about. But as we approach, so I thought as we got to the Sasquatch sprint here, I thought it was going to get a lot harder going through this part because of the fact that, we have this little bit of a rolling terrain and then kind of, sweep down through the bridge. And then as it loops back around, it kicks back up. So I thought it was going to be a lot harder going through this. But thankfully, while there looks like someone attacking off the front, where, as we started coming through, it really wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Thankfully, we kind of stayed together. You still see my average watts are, just under my FTP. The, pace that I'm going at, just to stay in I've got, 160, 170 watts of draft savings, and I'm still doing mid 200s just to keep up. Now, I kept pushing myself to the front of the group or to the front of the front, or in the front group of riders. That's what I'm trying to say. Kept pushing myself towards the front because races like this, you don't want to be so far back that you could potentially get stuck in a split. Which, as you can see, there's already a few riders off the back. Um, we have a total. It says 87 riders, but I don't think the full 87 actually showed up. Or was racing. Our group was 61 and kind of held that for a while. And there was a few people off the back. I think 3 off the back, basically from the get-go. And then one person kind of falling off right now. And so as we start to make our way up this bridge, I see a lot of people use their feather, and I kind of didn't quite understand that because even though it's a 3% riser, it's not. I felt like we were so far away from the next opportunity to use our power up that I didn't want to use it. I was still feeling good at this point. We are doing we're basically holding my 20-minute power at hovering in the 3 to 3.5 watts per kilogram, and so it's the pace is moving. We are definitely we're definitely moving. So, like I said, I'm gonna fast forward through some of this and jump to uh, the next part of the race. And so, moving on forward, you see the group again just really stays together. And while we're going through this, there's a couple moments where I felt like, man, I should try and push on and push hard. You see, there's a TFC rider who you'll see pop up in the chat multiple times, Deadpool. He is, he'll go off the front and kind of like weave back and forth and kind of keep things active, but not really pushing hard enough to where, he's trying to create any chaos. And so you see I was off the front for a split second there just to kind of, get myself, like I didn't intend on being off the front completely. I didn't drop my watts when I did that. So as we're coming in and through the coastline, getting ready to come out of, this part of Watopia and into the desert. So as we start to come through this portal and go through the roundabout, I 100% expected this to be where it really starts to get a lot harder. Because as you can see, our group is still 50 something strong. Probably a little more than that, but 50 something strong. And, this riser going in and going out of the desert into, the Titans Grove jungle area and then back out. Because again, we're not going through Titans Grove on this course. You know, this is where oftentimes the race will start to split up because it's just long enough to be painful. And so since I was already off the front, I figured might as well keep it going and just kind of held my watts around the 400-ish range, which again at this point I'm still feeling good. It's still feeling like I can handle this pace. You see one of our riders is off the front, and I'm kind of just staying with this front group so that way if there is any sort of attacks, I can bring up the pace from the rear while our other rider off the front just keeps the pace and control from there. And so you see we end up kind of swapping spots towards the top here. Ryan falls to the back and I kind of push up to the front. And as that happens, other riders, as you can see from the chart, everybody else is kind of on our wheels. And so there's really no point in, working that hard to really drive the pace anymore. Even though I am, holding my watts a bit, knowing that this flat part, if you slow down too much, you could lose a lot of momentum there. And so as we hit this downhill, we'll start to, kind of maintain the pace, even though it was a little bit harder. Um, than usual because you can see it seems like people are attacking when really it's just as we start hitting the downhill the pace just got faster. And so just kind of scrolling through this part as quick as possible because at this point it really does feel like everybody's just going to stay together. Like not really, not a lot of people attacking off the front, not a lot of people pushing the pace hard. Yeah, we did split the group there coming up out of the desert. And so you see we got, 40 in this group right now coming up over the top of this. I figured a few more people would begin to drop off because again, taking my big swig because I knew the pain was coming. And so I didn't want to have to stop to try and drink while we were in Jarvis. And so getting back to it, again, coming up through the docks here and then going through this little, 2% ramp all the way up to the Italian villas. Again, another spot where I thought the pace would have gotten a lot harder, but it didn't. And so I was kind of happy that, we all stayed together and we were really actively actually trying to slow down the pace going through that. And so as we get over into the Italian villas, just make our way out, going down the dirty Suppressa. And again, as we hit the tarmac here, the pace really starts to slow down. You see I'm in the 100-ish watts, upper hundreds. And so you can tell everybody was anticipating this effort going up the Jarvis KOM. And so as we round the corner, you see we got essentially all the main players in this group of 40. And everybody's just kind of, I feel like this is the point in a real bike race where everybody's just kind of looking at each other to figure out like, all right, are people going to attack? What's going to happen? What's going on? And so
Yeah.
even though we have this banner coming up, I decided to hold on to my feather because I knew going up to Jarvis, I didn't want to risk getting a draft bus on this through this banner. So figured I'd hold on to my feather. And as we make our way through Jarvis, then I can deploy it through the climb. And so as we get moving, again, you can see I'm pushing the watts up ever so slightly and then really starting to get into where I want to pace myself at into the 300s on this climb. And then obviously ramping up a lot higher than that because I wanted to make sure not only that I stayed off the front, but I wanted to make the pace going up this climb as hard as possible. I know we got a few good climbers on our team, and so that meant that we could really make this effort happen. And so as I'm pushing up over the top, Pole Hill just flies past me doing 12 watts per kilogram. And you got Pedersen coming up behind me as well. And so that, when that started happening, I was like, all right, I got to pace myself a little better. I'm, doing 400 or 500 watts ish, kind of dropping into the upper 200s, low 300s. And so if I don't pace myself well, I was going to run out of steam before this before they ended this climb, and I didn't want to fall so far back that I end up losing it. And so as we're going up the climb here, I'm holding the group that I'm in, I'm holding it pretty well. You know, we're starting to creep up on the riders in front of us, holding, you know, they're holding them at 4 seconds or so, but I knew as soon as we got to this part of the bridge, I knew this was the end of the climb. And so that's really what I was looking forward to, is just getting up to the top of this climb as quickly as possible. You see a bunch more riders come up behind us and start to catch on. And so this is a nice group that we had going up through the top of Jarvis. So I give a second strong attack here going up to the top. And as I'm getting ready to cross the line, we got a bunch of people coming through. And so while I did get a PR, and everybody got a PR, it looks like, on that group, I do my best to kind of get some rest on the downhill, because again, this sprint at the end, knowing that we're 2 kilometers from the finish, I figured it was either going to be madness or it was going to be controlled, and then the madness was going to let loose. And so that's why I want to switch it back to real time, because again, it's at this point the apprehension of what's going to happen is starting to build up, and really trying to gauge who's doing what. um, you know, we didn't have our normal DS on our call, but you know, the guys were like, hey, you know, the sprint banner here is not the finish, so let's make sure that we stay strong up front in getting through the sprint banner. Obviously, no one was going to go for the sprint because there's no points or anything like that. We're just kind of cruising. And so as we make our way through, now I have launched in the past from the sprint banner, um, and have used that with some success. So I thought about it, but it's such a long ways away, still, you know, 800 meters away. I figured it's best for me to just kind of play it safe, stay in the group as long as possible. My heart rate's still in the upper, you know, mid to upper 160s. We're starting to, you know, the pace is starting to get harder, because everybody's, you know, doing their best to not, you know, not peel off. Even though we got some good splits in the groups, you know, we still have 20 riders up front that are going to be contending for this final sprint. And so as we hit the 400-meter mark, you hear I shift a couple gears. I see a bunch of people drop their draft bus. And so I start pushing as hard as I can to just kind of keep up with the front group, and hope that I can, you know, really make the sprint as hard as possible for, you know, anyone that was going to contend for it, and as long as possible. And so you see right now I got a group of 3 of us, but this CFC rider comes through and just manages to get us on the line. But we still, at the end of the day, we still got
just in time.
3, 4, and 5 up front, and continuing down the road. We got a, you know, bunch of guys in this front group, and so it was absolutely epic and a fantastic race. Congrats to TFC and OTR for taking first and second, and Riz for taking third, making it a fantastic race. And again, you know, coming in 4th place, I felt like for this type of race, I felt good. It felt good for sure. Definitely feeling stronger than I have in a while. So
Great job,
I will leave you guys there. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you decide to come out next time we have one of these, or any ladder race. Find a team, get on it, and we will see each other on the roads of Watopia or on the roads of Zwift. Catch you guys on the next race.